Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to talk about the topic I wanted to talk for quite a while, and that is something I wished I would have come across years ago when I was looking into studying a language related degree. I simply was looking for comparisons and for personal experiences from people who had already studied the language I wanted to study and I was looking to get into, So I think this video will be very useful for not only people out there who are looking to study a language related degree, but also people who just want to study or learn a new language for professional reasons, for also personal reasons, for whatever reasons. I think this kind of video can really help you compare languages and see what language would be like best for you to learn. Of course, I'm not saying that one language is better than the other. This is a little disclaimer, but I'm just saying from my experience and also from facts what these languages brought me, what having learned these languages brought me, and in what way I am and was using these languages. So this video is going to talk about specifically languages that are very similar, and these three languages are Romance-based languages. That means they come from the same root, which is Latin. Latin is not a language that is spoken nowadays, but Latin was a language, and the closest language that is spoken nowadays to Latin is Italian, and I think also a little bit of Romanian. But in this video, we are going to speak about some facts of these languages, what the differences are, what the facts about them are, and what my personal experiences with these languages has been.
All right, before we get into the topic, let me guys tell you about my newly launched Mastermind 30-day Polyglot Bootcamp. This is a program to teach you all methods and techniques to successfully learn any language in just 30 days.
So you have all the information in just one course, and there you will have everything you need to learn a language from scratch and become fluent in it. A lot of language learning apps and language schools will not teach you the techniques to apply on language learning. Basically, you're just getting everything handed. For example, learn Spanish, learn German, learn Russian. However, you're not getting the technique on how to learn. In this 30-day bootcamp, I will teach you life lessons. I basically am coaching you, so every single step will be also guided. You will have a community with other people to talk to. This is super important. I have also live Q&A lessons and sessions with you guys, so you can ask questions along the way. You're not alone in this. I'm accompanying you basically from day one until the end and also beyond. So if you want to know more about the courses, if you want to know more about how to enroll, about the Polyglot Bootcamp, definitely go and click the link down below. I have a special coupon code for all of you guys, so anyone who comes from this video will get 15% off. So click the link down below. All right, so let's start with the first language, which is Spanish. Spanish is the first language among those three that I learned, and let's see some kind of facts about Spanish. Spanish is one of the most popular languages worldwide, and right after Mandarin, Spanish is the most spoken language worldwide in terms of native speakers. Spanish has about 500 million native speakers worldwide, and that is not only in South America or Latin America, but that is also across borders on other continents. As I said, Spanish originated from Latin, just like the other two languages I'm going to talk about, just like Portuguese and Italian. Spanish originated on the Iberian Peninsula. Iberian Peninsula is where today Spain and Portugal are. So Portugal and Spain share the space of the Iberian Peninsula. Apart from being the second most spoken language worldwide, Spanish is also one of the 6 diplomatic languages. So Spanish is part of the 6 UN languages. That is something very important to note when you want to learn Spanish for professional reasons, because Spanish is a language that you're definitely going to be using. So those were just a couple of facts about Spanish. Let's see what the actual advantages of learning Spanish are. The first advantage is definitely that Spanish, compared to other languages, is a fairly easy language. Spanish is a phonetic language. That means the words are exactly pronounced the way they're written. So mostly you won't have problems pronouncing the words because when you see them written, they are pronounced that way. English is not like that. Like for example, the word though and tough might be considered to be very similar, like the orthography is almost the same, but still the pronunciation is completely different, though and tough. Like in one way, the phonetics changes completely, even though the writing is almost the same. And that is why Spanish is easier in terms of pronunciation, because for the most part, you will not have problems pronouncing Spanish words when you see them written. Words are pronounced as they are spelled. Another advantage is definitely that there are so many Spanish speakers worldwide, just after Mandarin speakers, that you will always have a chance to practice Spanish no matter in the world almost where you are. Just like with Mandarin, you will always have the chance, the opportunity to practice Mandarin because there are so many speakers out there spread worldwide. So you can always find someone who speaks Mandarin, and you can always basically in every corner of the world almost find someone who speaks Spanish. So that's a good thing when you want to start learning Spanish, because you might want to get into a community that speaks Spanish, or you might want to, get into contact with people who speak Spanish, who are native speakers that you can exchange with. And now I'm going to talk about a couple of personal experiences with Spanish. As I mentioned a couple of times before, I studied Spanish in school and later on went to Spain. I went there for a year, kind of like a gap year, and then decided to stay there. So from my experience, up until now, I've always used Spanish. I use it daily. I have friends who speak Spanish. I use it at work too. Well, now I'm doing this full time, but before I also used to use Spanish quite frequently in my other jobs I had. Even when I was studying, I had like part-time jobs, and I used to always use Spanish with those part-time jobs as well as in my full-time job. So with one part-time job, for example, that was in a very big, like the biggest department store in Paris, I was in contact with a lot of customers, a lot of international customers, and a lot of international customers do speak Spanish. So in France, in Paris, I had the most contact with Mandarin speakers and the most with Portuguese and Spanish speakers. So Spanish speakers and Mandarin speakers were always on the top customer list. Like anywhere where you work with international customers, having Spanish on your curriculum will always help you get jobs anywhere. And not only if you're working with international customers or clients, but also working with international branches of your company that might have their headquarters, for example, in the States or in Europe or in Asia, wherever they are. So if you're working with the Spanish speaking market, that is a huge market. You can almost always be guaranteed to get a job when you have Spanish on your curriculum. Of course, nowadays, just having one language on your curriculum, one additional language, is not always enough, because nowadays, the world is so global that people are just getting to more and more contact with other languages and speaking also other languages. Like here in Europe, if you just speak, for example, English on top of your native language, like let's say here in Germany, you just speak English on top of a native language, that means two languages, your chances are really smaller to get the same position as someone who is applying for the same spot, speaks like 3-4 languages, speaks like French on top, Spanish, Portuguese on top. They would most likely get the position because they speak more languages. So up until now, out of these 3 languages, Spanish is definitely the one that I've used the most, be it professional wise, in my personal life, and also educational wise. I studied in Spain, I studied in Spanish, but not only having studied in Spain, but even traveling, I always encounter Spanish speakers. And I can say like one thing, for example, traveling to New York. I stayed in New York for a month at a friend's house, and the neighborhood was heavily Spanish speaking. So basically that helped me so much that I was able to communicate with the people there, and I was going to the bodegas, going to the stores and speaking Spanish. I thought I would be somewhere in Latin America, honestly. I didn't sometimes I even forgot that I was in New York. But that is something that helped me so much because I was there with a friend who only spoke mainly French, French and a little bit of English. So her French didn't get her that far in New York, but Spanish definitely got me like doing everything normally and naturally. I never had problems communicating because even though I didn't get to speak that much English in that neighborhood, Spanish got me around and helped me do everything I wanted to do. So Spanish after English is basically the language I would recommend the most learning. The next language is Portuguese. Portuguese originated as well from Latin, just like Spanish, also on the Iberian Peninsula, which is shared by Portugal and Spain. That is why Spanish and Portuguese share about 90% of their words of lexical similarity. Like their words are so similar that each speaker from each language could read text in the other language and basically understand more or less what the text is saying. That happened with me too. I was already speaking Spanish and I used to read Portuguese text. I wasn't even speaking Portuguese, but I used to read the text and I would basically understand 80% of what the text would say. So the lexical similarity is very, very high between those languages. That is why when you want to learn Portuguese, depending on which language is your native language, what language you're starting off with, I would, for example, recommend for French native speakers to start Portuguese first because they have the same nasal sounds, for example. So it would be much easier for a French speaker to learn Portuguese, I think, than, for example, a German speaker or an English speaker even who has no experience of like nasal sounds and stuff like that. So depending on which language you're studying off, I always recommend either to start with Spanish if you're coming from a language that is similar, and because Spanish overall is the easier language between those two. But if you're coming from a language that is similar to Portuguese, then I would also advise to learn Portuguese. Portuguese is also the official language in 9 countries across South America, namely Brazil, and also Macau, and also a couple of countries in Africa. So you will definitely have use with Portuguese as well when you're going to not only those places, just like I mentioned, the department store I was working at, right after Mandarin and Spanish speakers, Portuguese speakers, Brazilians were the 3rd largest group of clients and customers we received. So Brazilians are basically, it's such a huge nation that they're everywhere almost in the world you can meet Brazilians and you can see it. Also their market is huge. So these are some advantages. Also, when you have learned Spanish or you already speak Spanish, it's much easier to learn Portuguese, and that is one of the reasons I learned Portuguese too, because I saw that the similarity is so big. And I just thought it would be a waste if I wouldn't learn Portuguese, because obviously I loved it too. What I want to say is you have to like all these languages. There's no sense in just learning a language, but you also have to like it. But I think with learning more about languages, you also learn to like them more and more and more. That happened with me with Portuguese. I did not like Portuguese at all in the beginning. I hated the sound of Portuguese. I thought Spanish was so much more beautiful. But as I got to learn more about the culture and meet more Portuguese speaking people, especially Brazilians, I just liked their culture, embraced more of the culture and wanted to get to know more about it, and that is where I got to more into the language. And that is something that you need to figure out just for yourself, I think. But here you have kind of the comparisons, you know. Now I'm talking about my personal experience. Portuguese is definitely a language that will come to use quite a lot. It is a language that comes to use for me professionally and also personally, and also when I'm traveling, you know. And for example, if you want to travel throughout Latin America, I would advise learning Portuguese. Also, if you already learned Spanish, or if you're planning to not only go to Brazil but just travel, I would always advise to learn Portuguese. And also, if you're working with Latin American markets, I would also advise to learn Portuguese, because Portuguese is such a huge economical potential market on whatever you're doing. I would always recommend to not just learn Spanish but also Portuguese. Those two in combination are a very powerful combination. Professionally, I think that has been proven to be so true in my professional experience, that I always use Portuguese and that I always use Spanish and Portuguese in combination. And I was mostly one of the only person who has that combination, so I got the job that maybe, you know, someone else wouldn't have gotten because they only spoke French and English. And the last language I want to compare is Italian. Italian is obviously the language that is least spoken out of all these three languages in terms of native speakers. Italian is literally just spoken in 4 countries. In Italy, obviously, in San Marino, in the Vatican State, and in parts of Switzerland. So if you learn Italian, keep that in mind, that you could only be speaking Italian in those 4 places, or, you know, it depends whatever you're learning Italian for. But keep that in mind, that Italian is not something that you would most probably use professionally, except you're working with Italian market in specific areas, or with Italian customers or people, but it depending on your job really. So Italian is spoken by around 85 million people in combination of all those 4 countries. So if you want to learn Italian, you really have to have a passion for it, just like with the other languages too. But Italian is definitely a language that will come to use far less than the other languages. In my personal experience, I can say that I never use Italian professionally. I had like maybe 1 or 2 translating jobs with Italian. Other than that, I've never used it. I don't use it that much personally, not at all basically. And you know, Italian is definitely a language I learned because I like it. I always liked Italian, but it is not a language that comes to use as much as I would like to, because professionally and personally, and also like from traveling, it doesn't come to use as much, you know, because you're most probably not gonna really speak Italian unless you travel to Italy. And that is the case from my experience. I traveled to it. The only time really I spoke Italian was when I traveled to Italy and when I traveled to Sardinia. Other than that, like traveling, for example, to the States or Latin America, you're not gonna speak Italian really. And I haven't really encountered that many Italians either abroad traveling. So Italian is definitely not a language that will come to use a lot. But that doesn't mean that you're not supposed to learn Italian. If you really have a passion for it and you have a purpose for it, you know why you're learning it, then definitely go ahead and learn it, because everyone obviously has to have their personal choice and the personal, you know, reasoning why they're wanting to learn a language. So for me, even if I have learned Italian, it didn't come to use as much as I would like to. But for you, it might come more to use because maybe you have family, or maybe you want to work in an Italian related field, or even in a country where Italian is spoken. So you need to kind of weigh those options out for you and see what will help you. I'm in no way saying that one language is better than the other, but this was just a comparison between, you know, facts, and also a comparison on my personal experience on what languages I use the most and what languages really help me advance, not just personally but also professionally. So I hope you like this kind of video, and I see you in my next one. Definitely leave in the comments down below what your choices are, if you already started learning those languages, and what you would recommend. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.